Welcome, traveler. It's time now to let go. The world of the waking is dimming, the day's weight has softened into dusk, and all the sharp edges of your thoughts are beginning to dissolve. You are safe now, here in this quiet space where nothing must be done, and nowhere calls your name. Let your body become still. Feel the hush wrap around you like ancient velvet, like moss on stone. There is no rush here, no burden of time, just the long breath of a story, drifting like fog over forgotten hills. Beyond the edge of map and memory lies a forest that no path claims, no compass points toward, a place that has always existed just beyond the edge of knowing. And in its heart there stands a tree, hollow and vast, old beyond reckoning. Beneath its roots, things stir, not with malice, not with fear, but with memory. The tree listens, and tonight, so shall we. Now, close your eyes and follow. The earth is soft. The leaves whisper your name. The story is waiting. Chapter 1. The Path of Sleeping Ferns. The forest was already there when the first breath of moonlight touched it, waiting unmoved, as if time had paused just long enough to let the world forget it. The trees stood tall but did not tower, their trunks wrapped in layers of moss that shimmered faintly in the dim light like velvet soaked in dusk. No wind moved through the branches, no birds called, and yet the forest did not feel empty. It felt watched, not with menace, but with curiosity, like a dream waiting to be remembered. The path, if it could be called that, was not marked. There were no stones, no steps worn smooth by feet, only the quiet parting of fern and fog, folding back slowly as if the forest itself were letting you in. The ferns reached waist high, their fronds soft and cool against the skin, releasing a faint scent of loam and lavender as they brushed past. The traveler, cloaked in silence and the deep breath of night, moved slowly. Each footstep seemed to hush the world around it. No direction called, no destination urged. There was only movement, slow and fluid, as if each motion brought them deeper, not only into the forest, but into the softened edges of themselves. Far above, the canopy formed a living ceiling, woven boughs, thick with ancient leaves that filtered the moonlight into silver-green strands. The sky could barely be seen, yet the light that managed to fall through was gentle, like water flowing over skin. Soon, the forest began to change, not suddenly, but gradually, as if the air itself was remembering something. The ferns grew thicker, their fronds bending with a kind of quiet weight. Stones appeared beside the path, covered in lichens that glowed faintly blue, like memories etched into the skin of the earth. A stream whispered somewhere to the left, its voice threading through the trunks like silk. The sound was not constant. It faded in and out, as if the water were deciding when to be known. The traveler paused, not from tiredness, but from instinct. Ahead, where the ferns parted, stood a tree unlike the others, not because it was taller or broader, though it was, but because it listened. Its bark was a deep gray-black, streaked with veins of soft ivory. Moss grew in swirling patterns along its base, and in the hollow where its roots spread apart, The earth seemed to breathe. It was not the hollow tree. No, not yet. But this was the first sentinel, a marker, a memory. The traveler stepped closer. At its base, nestled between roots like fingers curled around a secret, lay a stone bowl filled with rainwater. The water's surface was perfectly still, reflecting not the traveler's face, but a sky that could not be seen, one filled with drifting clouds and slow stars. The traveler knelt, letting fingers trail through the surface. No ripples formed, only a sensation, light and distant, like remembering the touch of someone who once called your name in a dream. The forest seemed to lean closer, and then the whisper came. Not a voice, not words, just a pulse in the air, a sigh in the spine, the sense that something had just turned its head somewhere far beneath the roots. The traveler rose again. There was no fear, only stillness. The path continued, winding softly deeper into the forest, though it never sharpened. No direction grew clearer, only the feeling of being led, not by trail, but by trust. All around, the trees began to curve subtly inward, as if drawing toward a center not yet reached. Their branches tangled like old thoughts, and the ferns grew lower, less wild. The fog thickened slightly, curling at the ankles, like a creature that did not want to be seen but did not wish to hide. And still the traveler walked. Somewhere in the distance the sound of chimes, barely audible, drifted on the still air. Not wind chimes, something softer, like glass humming beneath water, like memory echoing through wood. As they moved further, the ground changed. Softer, spongier, the air warmer, the trees closer now, as though the world itself were preparing to whisper, preparing to open. And then, in the hush before sleep fully claims its listener, the first true glimpse appeared. Through the low-hung branches, past the curtain of fog and fern, a tree stood alone, vast, hollow, breathing, not waiting, welcoming. Its roots curled down into the earth like stairways, its trunk split wide at the base, revealing a shadowed chamber lit not by flame, but by the slow glow of dreaming things. The traveler did not speak. They stepped forward, and the roots opened. The forest did not end. It deepened, and the whisper came again, this time closer, this time knowing. Chapter 2, The Chamber of Remembered Echoes. The roots of the hollow tree spiraled wide, like arms gently curled around the hollow of the world. As the traveler stepped across the threshold, the forest above seemed to hold its breath, not out of fear or farewell, but reverence. Inside, the light changed. It was not dim nor bright. It pulsed softly like breath, sourced from nowhere visible and casting no shadows. The chamber stretched far beneath the surface, yet it felt close, intimate, as if the tree's heart had opened to share something meant only for this moment. The air was warm, still. It carried the scent of cedar and old parchment, of dried herbs hung in forgotten rooms, and something else, something like worn fabric or skin that once pressed against your own. The traveler moved slowly, their footsteps soundless across the floor of compacted root and velvet moss. Along the inner walls of the tree, shelves had formed not by hand, but by intention. Natural folds in the wood, shaped over centuries, cradling objects left by those who had come before. A cracked teacup, a bundle of feathers tied with blue thread, a bell with no clapper. Each item rested in silence, untouched, but not forgotten. The traveler paused before a cluster of tiny scrolls, each no longer than a fingertip, sealed with glimmering wax. They did not open one. They didn't need to. The feeling was already there. Words written, but never spoken. Promises never said aloud. Forgiveness too tender to reach the tongue. They moved on, deeper into the chamber. The ceiling opened upward now, revealing an impossible space, a hollow so vast it could not fit within the tree, and yet it did. Far above, high within the curve of the trunk, soft glimmers drifted down like falling dust. Not stars, memories. They glowed faintly as they descended, catching briefly in the air before dissolving like ash into stillness. The traveler reached out a hand. One of the glimmers brushed across their palm and lingered, cool and soft as silk. A flicker passed behind their eyes. Not a scene, but a sensation. Rain on warm stone, the sound of footstep crossing a wooden bridge, the weight of someone resting beside them long ago. The memory was not theirs, and yet they remembered it. Around them the chamber pulsed again, barely perceptible, like the slow blink of a dreaming creature. Somewhere deeper within, a low hum began to build, not loud, not urgent, just present. A voice, not a voice. A whisper shaped like meaning. The traveler followed it, not with ears, but with the pull in their chest that knows where quiet wants to take you. They passed beneath a long arch of woven roots, their surfaces lined with carvings not made by tools, but by time. Symbols, flowing like a language never spoken aloud. Spirals, eyes, circles nested within circles. Each one breathed softly as the traveler moved past. Beyond the arch, the chamber narrowed. The walls curled inward, becoming smoother, as though the tree was guiding, not confining. At the end of the passage, a pool waited. Shallow, silent. Its surface shimmered with a light that didn't reflect. It glowed from below, from deep within the stillness. The traveler knelt beside it, leaning in. The water was perfectly clear, but it did not show the face of the one who peered into it. It showed a door, not a physical one, not of wood or stone, but something that had once been closed. Inside the traveler, something softened, not with understanding, but with allowing. They dipped their fingers into the pool. The ripples moved outward, then inward, then outward again. Each wave carried a sound, not heard, but felt. Footsteps in another room. A sigh after a long-held silence, the sound of a name being remembered. The walls of the chamber breathed in. The echoes stirred, and for a moment the traveler was not alone. All around them the whispers began, not as voices but as presence, not haunting, holding. They did not ask for anything. They did not demand to be known. They simply were, a chorus of memory, of being, of having once mattered. The traveler sat back, letting the sounds wash over them. The pool calmed again. The chamber settled. The voices faded not into silence, but into stillness. And something in the traveler's chest, that quiet ache that never had a name, let go. A little, just a little, enough. Chapter 3. Beneath the moss-covered veil. The chamber behind the pool did not lead outward, but downward. A narrow passage opened quietly at the edge of the moss, hidden in plain sight, as if it had been waiting for someone to notice without trying. The traveler stepped lightly, the soles of their feet brushing soft green threads that seemed to pulse gently with their movement. The light dimmed, not in warning, but in welcome. It became something softer, more interior, as if the light here did not come from the world, but from within the tree itself, steady, warm, and old. The path sloped gradually beneath the deepest roots, and as the traveler descended, the air changed. It grew denser, cooler, touched with the scent of damp stone and ancient soil. The silence here was not empty. It was complete. The kind of silence that forms when nothing is missing, when all things have already been said and only the breath of being remains. Walls of woven root and soft earth rose on either side, interlaced with fine moss and pale threads of mycelium that shimmered faintly like starlight caught in cobwebs. The space opened into a vast chamber, not carved or built, but grown, a living hollow shaped by the long patience of the hollow tree and the things it remembered. The floor was smooth stone, veined with silver. Pools of shallow water stretched between low ridges, reflecting not the chamber above them, but shifting images that came and went without rhythm. A forest in springtime, a child asleep beneath a pale blanket, a fox stepping across frost-dusted grass. Each image lingered for a moment, then faded, leaving only the mirrored surface behind. The traveler paused at the edge of one such pool and knelt again, not to drink or reach, but simply to witness. Their reflection did not appear. Instead, something older looked back, eyes formed of cloud and fern, a face shaped not from features, but from feeling, familiar and unnameable. The image flickered and was gone, as if it had never truly been there. The pool shimmered once, then stilled. Farther in, the chamber narrowed again, leading into a corridor lined with clusters of pale mushrooms that pulsed gently with a quiet, green-gold glow. Their light was soothing, the way a lullaby hums in the space between dreams. The traveler walked slowly, listening to the gentle rhythm of their own breath, the way it echoed off the root-wrapped walls like wind moving through an old house. There were markings here, symbols traced faintly into the moss, spiraling patterns not etched with intention, but grown into being. The shapes seemed to respond as the traveler passed, shifting slightly beneath the eye, as if revealing themselves only to those moving slowly enough to see them. And then ahead, the corridor opened into a smaller chamber, round and low, with a ceiling that curved inward like the underside of a great bowl. In the center stood a stone pedestal, no higher than a knee, holding a small, smooth object wrapped in folds of ancient cloth. The traveler approached, drawn not by urgency, but by invitation. They knelt and unwrapped the cloth gently. Inside, resting on a bed of moss as soft as breath, was a key, not made of metal, not cold or hard. It was carved from wood, darker than shadow, etched with faint whorls like the rings of an old tree. Though simple in form, it radiated warmth, as if it had been waiting not just to be found, but to remember who it was for. The traveler lifted it carefully. It was light, but not weightless, familiar, but not known. As their hand closed around it, the walls of the chamber seemed to shift, not physically, but with meaning. A passage opened to the left, behind a curtain of trailing moss that parted silently as they moved toward it. The air here was warmer again, thick with scent, crushed herbs, cedar wood, and something like candle smoke, long faded. They stepped through the veil. On the other side, the space opened once more. Not a chamber now, but a long gallery filled with doors. Each was unique, some round, others tall and thin. Some formed of bark and others of bone-white driftwood. A few bore symbols that moved slightly when watched from the corner of the eye. Others had no markings at all. The traveler walked among them, the key still warm in their hand. Not looking for a match, there was no need. The door would find them, and it did. A low oaken door at the far end of the gallery, its surface soft with moss and lined with a spiral of tiny glass beads. No handle, no lock, just a keyhole shaped precisely for what they held. The traveler paused. Behind the door, nothing stirred, nothing waited, only welcome. They pressed the key into the lock. The moss rustled faintly. The door opened, and from the darkness beyond, a slow exhale, not sound, not air, but time itself, uncoiling. The traveler stepped through, and the veil closed behind them, soft as dusk. Chapter 4. The Library of Sleeping Names. The threshold the traveler crossed did not lead into darkness, though it might have seemed so at first. The space beyond the oaken door was hushed and vast, a cavern not made of stone or soil, but of woven silence. The air was thicker here, but not heavy, more like velvet draped over the senses, warm, still, and untouched by time. Before them, the chamber unfolded, wide, round, and softly lit by countless strands of faint golden thread that hung like spider silk from above. They did not glow exactly. They shimmered gently, pulsing in and out of sight, like candlelight seen through half-closed eyes. They were not threads of light. They were names, not names spoken aloud or written in ink. These were the names kept quietly in the folds of memory, nestled deep where language thins and all that remains is knowing. They hung suspended in the hush, each one trailing down into a tiny bundle of moss and root, cradled with care. The traveler stepped lightly across the chamber, their feet brushing over a floor made of pressed leaves and old parchment, the surface soft and barely rustling beneath them. The scent of old ink and hollow bark lingered in the air, mingled with something less familiar, like the echo of singing heard once and long ago. There were no shelves in this library, no walls lined with books or scrolls. Instead, the space breathed and moved with organic rhythm. Between the strands of name thread and the drifts of soft lichen lining the curved walls, there were alcoves, small hollows that opened as the traveler neared, revealing fragments of stories resting within. One alcove held a smooth river stone with a single indentation at its center. When the traveler looked closer, they felt the weight of a hand once gripping it tightly, a child's hand, standing at the edge of a deep river. The fear was gone now. Only the memory of bravery remained. Another alcove held a dried sprig of lavender bound with a strand of hair. The scent was muted but persistent, and the traveler could almost hear a voice humming quietly in a room lit by firelight. The song was not for them, and yet they remembered the feeling of being near it, of sitting safely just outside its reach. They walked onward, not hurried, not searching. The names hanging from the ceiling pulsed slowly as they passed, and the air shifted around them like water parting for a gentle swimmer. At the center of the library stood a great tree stump, its surface polished, smooth as glass. It was low to the ground, wide enough to sit upon, and etched with the spiral pattern that had followed the traveler since their descent. Around it, the name threads hung denser, a canopy of memory woven so tightly that the chamber felt like a mind turned inward. The traveler approached and sat, laying their hands flat against the stump's warm surface. A low vibration hummed beneath their palms, subtle, steady, like a heart remembering its rhythm. No vision came, no sound, just stillness, and then the presence. It wasn't a figure, it wasn't a voice, it was a sense of something vast and benevolent, not separate from the traveler, but entangled with them, like roots sharing water beneath the surface of the world. The Library of Sleeping Names did not keep records as the waking world does. It kept essence, moments, feelings, the truth behind the shape of a name, not the sound, but the soul of it. The traveler closed their eyes, and in the quiet, a story unfolded, not in words, but in warmth. They saw a pair of hands placing stones in a circle, building a quiet place in the woods. They felt the deep silence of someone listening to the wind for answers it never spoke aloud. They remembered a night spent awake beside a window, waiting for no one, but hoping for someone. All of these memories, none of them belonging to the traveler, and yet all of them known, flowed into their heart like a slow tide, not to be held, just to be honored. a single thread lowered from above, drifting toward them with unhurried grace. It hung before them, shimmering faintly with the echo of a name that had once been whispered only in dreams. The traveler reached up and touched it. Their breath slowed, the world too. Not gone, just quiet. The thread faded back into the air. The stump beneath them pulsed once more, softer now. An unseen door opened at the far end of the chamber, its threshold framed with arching roots carved by time into the shape of an eye. The traveler rose, not because they were finished, but because the story was ready. They stepped forward through the archway, leaving behind the strands of names, the lavender and stone, the hum and hush of the place that remembered. Beyond the door, the path curved upward once more, faint light ahead, like early dawn just beginning to gather. The hollow tree was almost finished with its telling. One last place remained, one last breath of the forest's ancient memory, and the traveler followed. Chapter 5. The Dream Root Chamber. The path that opened before the traveler was narrow but certain, a ribbon of soft earth bordered by low-growing ferns that shimmered with a breathless calm. The silence deepened as they stepped forward, not heavy or solemn, but soft, as if the world itself were exhaling in long, slow surrender. Here, the roots arched overhead in quiet reverence, guiding the way forward not as walls, but as gentle arms. The soil beneath their feet was warm with memory, each step sinking slightly into the patient years that had passed through this place. There was no rush now, no destination to seek, only the motion itself, the way it curved inward like thought returning home. The light that had accompanied the traveler since the upper branches of the hollow tree was different here, not brighter, not dimmer, just nearer, closer to the skin. It no longer flickered from without, but glowed from within the walls, from the fibers of the roots themselves. Soft, honey-colored light that pulsed like the heartbeat of a world that had never known haste. Eventually, the path widened, and the traveler emerged into a chamber unlike any they had yet seen. It was round, modest, and quiet, but not empty. This place was full. Full in the way a song can fill a space long after it stopped playing. Full in the way a loved one's absence still wraps around the furniture, the air, the heartbeat. This was the heart of the hollow tree, the dream root chamber, and everything in it waited in stillness, not for purpose, not for discovery, but for return. At its center, a low resting place made from the living roots of the tree curved gently upward, forming a cradle more than a bed. It was lined with velvet moss, pale green and cool to the touch. Small feather-like leaves had fallen in places and remained undisturbed, as if even the air here knew not to trouble them. The traveler approached with the reverence one gives to an old truth. Their breath moved quietly through them, deeper now, slower, as if their body were remembering how to rest, how to release. Beside the cradle lay a shallow bowl carved from bone-smooth stone, filled with clear water. A single sprig of lavender floated in its center, gently spinning in place. Around the bowl, a ring of small hollow stones had been arranged in a perfect spiral, some natural, some carved, each bearing a small mark, each one different, each one faint. They knelt beside the bowl, not to drink, just to be near it. A soft hum moved through the chamber, not a sound, but a vibration, low and even, the kind that slips beneath words and lingers in the ribcage. It was not the tree, it was not the air, it was the presence of rest, made tangible, the hush that holds all things. High above, where the rounded walls curved inward to form a dome, there were small circular openings in the ceiling, like the mouths of sleeping seeds. Through them, a gentle illumination drifted down, not sunlight, not moonlight, but something softer, deeper, the color of a closed eye. The traveler breathed, and breathed again, then lay down. The moss accepted them without resistance, shaping itself to the lines of their form like memory. The cradle did not confine, it simply held, gently, as though it had always known the traveler's shape, and had simply been waiting to welcome them back. The wooden key, still warm from their hand, was placed quietly at their side. Its work was finished. No more locks, no more doors, only stillness now. Above them, something began to fall. Or perhaps descend is the better word. Fine threads of silver light, thinner than hair, began to drift downward from the openings above, not hurried, not seeking. Each one swayed as if moved by breath too old to name. They touched the traveler one by one, lightly across the forehead, the fingertips, the chest, and each touch brought warmth, not the warmth of heat, but of recognition, the gentle pulse of being seen without needing to speak, the hush of belonging. One thread brushed their lips, and in that instant, every word they had never said, the ones lost to silence, the ones held too tightly, were gathered, not for telling, but for keeping. Not a burden, a blessing. A soft knowing folded into the folds of the hollow tree. The bowl of water shimmered once, the lavender shifting in a lazy turn, and the chamber grew still, utterly still, not empty, never empty, but full, full of what remains when everything else has been set down. No memory, no thought, no need, just rest, complete, deep, unending. Outside, the hollow tree stood beneath the slow-turning sky, its branches rising like questions that never needed answers. Moss grew quietly over its roots. The air in the forest was calm, thick with the scent of pine and earth. Wind did not pass here without purpose. The world beyond forgot the path. As it should. Not all doors are meant to remain open, but some are meant to be found again, only in dreams. And within the tree, the traveler slept. And within their sleep, the tree remembered. And so it would remain. A cradle hidden beneath the turning of years. A hush beneath the rustle of leaves, a whisper beneath the hollow tree. Always just so,